After all the issues at Le Mans 24-hour virtual, how negative was the event for the sim racing community? That and much more on this week's The Late Apex. Hello and welcome. I'm Tim Cox with Sam Fitzpatrick for another episode of The Late Apex, and let's get stuck into Le Mans 24-hour virtual. Bit of housekeeping first of all. Of course, Team Redline number 2 ran out victorious. That was Drugovic, Rosenquist, Bennett and Lullum in the P2 category, and of course that overall victory. Congratulations to them. Meanwhile, it was R8G eSports who picked up the GTE category. And of course, Redline 71, well, they still took the GT title overall. And, well, Sam, I think now we've covered that part, let's talk about the red flags.
So many issues, unfortunately, with the event. Some similar issues to what we've had in previous virtual Le Mans events as well. And of course, it all started off, Tim, with those server issues in the first 6 or 7 hours of the race. We had 2 red flags, unfortunately, many drivers being eliminated from the server.
Real life motorsport, it's what we're trying to emulate. Is this almost a similar type thing where you do have mechanical failures and put into the pits, or you have to retire the car, you do fall numerous laps down? You see it in the real world happen, every 24 hours of Le Mans. Is it almost a little bit the same?
A couple of real-life drivers who are affiliated with the event did have that suggestion. I think it's worth considering. When you have a mechanical failure, that's your fault for not building the car better in that situation quite often. Whereas with a server issue, when you have no control of it on your side, there's nothing you can do about it. It's completely random, and so it just felt very unfair, unfortunately. And of course, after those first 2 red flags, the event, unfortunately, they had to remove the rain in order to improve the issues. And then in the second part of the event, when it came back to daytime, unfortunately, there were more random disconnects, and that disconnected the number 1 Redline P2 car, which was going for the title. And unfortunately, I've lost out on the title to Coanda in the end in that category, led by 20 points going in, lost the championship in the end because they were disconnected and couldn't fight for the win. And Max Verstappen very much made his emotions known to everyone.
Yeah, basically telling everyone uninstall it, free up some hard drive on your space on your PC. We've all seen the clips pretty much explaining. And it is true. These drivers put months of preparation into these events, fine-tuning the setups, ensuring that absolutely everything is perfect as can be from their side. And it's all gone through, as you mentioned, no fault of their own whatsoever.
The autopsy has gone on as to why the event had the issues that it had. And for at least Motorsport Games and for rFactor, they're very much putting it down to DDoS attacks, or at least the early issues that we saw for that. Unfortunately, it just doesn't seem like they had the security available for it. The IP address was known to pretty much anyone on the sim who could potentially do that. And so it's very much difficult to feel sympathy for the organisers, considering that this is a huge event. It costs $2,000 to enter. It's got many real-life drivers in, has huge backing from many real-life organisations, real-life drivers. And of course, they've had 2 goes at it already, and yet it seemed like quite an amateurish event that was put on.
I mean, maybe, when it goes big on a big global scale like it did, that forces their hand to dramatically do something about it, because surely the ACO, the people who obviously own Le Mans and World Endurance Championship, they're going to be looking to do something about this now, because, it doesn't look good on their brand when there's a lot of negative press associated with it.
Big question now is where does the event go? How can they improve on it? They can improve rFactor, and I think absolutely that's what you were suggesting, Tim. A few suggestions. Why don't you just host it on another sim? Well, that's not going to happen. The event is run by Motorsport Games.
10-year contract as well, wasn't it, Sam?
Exactly. Motorsport Games owns rFactor 2. and therefore the event will always be held on R-Factor 2. 10-year license, as you're saying, was signed for that. So that's not going to change, and we shouldn't consider, that it is going to change. It's just a case of they need to sort it out, and unfortunately, I'm not sure if they can recover for a few years at least the damage that this has done. They've sort of got away with it in previous years, but Max Verstappen single-handedly is such a huge driver, such a massive figure. If he says that he's not going to take part in it anymore, and other people shouldn't take part in it anymore, people aren't going to take part in it anymore. So it's going to be very, very tricky for them to get their credentials back up and to return to the size that this championship was this year.
We're trying to push sim racing to be, we know it's never going to be quite as big as real life motorsport, but to get it somewhere close to and bigger within the eSports scene as a whole, across all different games, it just doesn't help itself whatsoever when the jewels in the crown falls apart and has so much negativity about it. It's absolutely gutting, to say the least. Love to know your thoughts. Make sure you drop us a note down in the comments. Love to hear from you as always. But let's take a little look across of what's been happening across in sim racing as a whole this week. Porsche have announced their collaboration with one of eSports' largest organisations, FaZe Clan. However, we are yet to know how the partnership will work, with Porsche already involved with Coanda. Race Room are hosting their annual 2.4 Hours of Daytona this weekend, featuring the P2, GTE and GT3 classes. The action will broadcast on Race Room's YouTube channel from 6:30 PM GMT on Friday. And we've seen several teams today announce their entry into ESL R1, the first series to be held on the highly anticipated Rennsport simulator. We'll be providing much more information on the championship in the next week's episode here of the Late Apex. We're going to a break now, but in the second half of the show, Sam chats to an F1 and sim racing strategist, and we preview who's going to win $5,000 in the Pro Sim Racing Sprint Championship Series finale.
We all know strategy is important in sim racing, so I sat down with Apex Racing Team strategist George Simmons about his exploits in the sim racing world along with Formula One.
What I've been doing with the strategy group is on the race weekends, going in, listening into the competitors' team radio, the onboard feeds, and trying to be a little bit of a outside view of providing that extra competitive information that the strategists themselves don't necessarily see because they're focused just on our two cars. So within that, you're listening to all of the conversations between the strategists and the engineers in mission control, and so that's how I've kind of got to build up a picture of how to do it professionally. Yeah, so when I joined Apex, I was never the fastest driver, and that was about the time that I'd started working at McLaren, and I was starting to get involved with helping do some of the volunteering roles on the strategy side at the F1 team, and just kind of through spending a lot of time with the strategists, started to build up a picture of how to run an effective race strategy, really, and yeah, just kind of slowly develop the process and yeah, got ourselves into a position now where I think we've got a fairly good understanding of what we're doing, and we go into the races pretty well prepared. I think definitely with the level that you're competing at in sim racing, where there's just needs to be 100% focus, and 1 or 2 attempts lost is huge. The fact that we've got a strategist working on all the time during the races just allows the drivers to concentrate on doing their job, which is getting the car around the track as fast as possible, and then everything else is subbed out to somebody else to think about instead. because you race on many different championships and events, there's so many different, you're always adapting, and the key bit is to try and just figure out what are the most important like key performance indicators for that series. Whereas in F1, things are much more static. Maybe with a big rule change, some of the variables might become more or less important, but generally you're doing the same kind of thing every time. And the next thing is just the amount of competitiveness, because the field spreads are way, way tighter in eSports. There's a lot more focus on getting the strategy absolutely right, because you can gain or lose a few seconds through your strategy, but only a few temps here and there on your pace. I think at the moment, I would say the Grand Prix stuff is probably you need more focus. But in the future, when we've got weather and potentially like safety cars and stuff in an endurance race, that will, be much, much more difficult.
Well, let's take a look at what's happening this week here on Apex Racing TV. Busy schedule, however, my pick of the bunch, Sam, is the 2023 Pro Sim Racing Sprint Championship Series, supported by VRS and Coliseum. It's their final build up to Christmas. We had the 3 qualifying rounds. There is $5,000 up for grab for the winner. And they're live from Daytona for the event.
And we've got Reina Talvar, Jordan Caruso, Ruben Bonga and Ryan Barneveld taking part. 3 of those guys part of BS competition. Caruso, the only Altus driver. And so it's going to be, I think, a game of teamwork. Such big stakes. They're going to be taking this very seriously. Awesome opportunity for them to get flown out to Daytona to be able to experience the Rex 24. But once it gets down to the track, it's going to be all about who gets that race win.
It is a little bit gutted that we'll be both here in the studios from Apex Racing TV.
We offered.
We did. We offered. We tried. We failed. We're still back in the studio. However, we'll have chat show correspondence, getting the drivers' reactions. We're covering every step of it. That's this Friday. One not to be missed. I do wonder for Jordan. It's going to be tough. He's going to get ganged up on. Of course, the track will be Daytona because they're there. He knows he's going to get bullied by the BS competition lads.
Yeah, it will be so tricky because the 3 of them are just going to form a train. There's pretty much nothing that Jordan can do. He can drive absolutely exceptionally, but he's very limited in his options, unfortunately. So, best of luck that he can, at least have a fight against those guys, because it will be tough work.
Oh, it's going to be one to watch, definitely. Well worth it. Make sure to check them all out. Of course, we will be live from the studio not long afterwards, covering Apex Racing League's GT3 Trophy 2. Busy Friday evening for sure. Make sure you check that out. But that's all we've got time for this week on the Late Apex. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Leave us a comment down below, but we'll see you in a week's time. Myself, Tim Cox, and Sam Fitzpatrick on the Late Apex.